Hello. It's been a while since I've done one of these videos. Last time I did one, I was talking about different storylines I was interested in seeing in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Now that we're heading into the second round, I thought I'd talk about the first round and what I'm excited to see in the second round, and also clean up on some of the stuff that happened to the Canucks. I sort of checked out in the last bunch of games the Canucks were playing against Calgary. It just didn't really matter to me. What I was hoping for is to see some rookies get to play. Jonah Gadjevich hardly got to play at all, got into a fight, and it would have been interesting to see him get a bit more rope. But for whatever reason, the Canucks just don't seem to want to play some of these rookie guys enough. Overall, when we look at the rookies that did get to play, Cole Lind looks like he still needs to prove a bit more. He had some moments. Jalen Chatfield, I think, could be a regular moving forward. Jack Rathbone was looking like a top four guy for sure, with maybe even a higher ceiling there. And Gadjevich we didn't really see much of. So it's going to take some time. It's going to take some more time next year. Be interesting to see Vasily Podkolzin come in. And the Canucks have a lot of work to do, but they've got some young players that are stepping up with Hoglander, and that's a pretty good sign. And Rathbone. I'd personally rather see, Chatfield, Levy, Rathbone. I know people are saying, oh, you can't just go with all these young, inexperienced defensemen, but really, other than Myers being able to bring that puck out, he's a liability in the defensive zone. I cannot go through one of these videos without talking about Myers, and that's the last thing I'm going to say about him. So for the Canucks, Benning is still here. I would have been pretty happy if they moved on. I would have been happy if they went after Gorton. I think he did a fantastic job in New York. And apparently when he was in Boston for a very short amount of time, he did some incredible moves that I believe led to their last Stanley Cup and led to them being such a dominant team that they still are 10 years later, and they look so good. You just look at the really good GMs around the league, Joe Sakic, Steve Yzerman, Gorton, the teams that they're building, the moves that they're making, they're taking advantage of the system. They have a plan. Yzerman trades Mantha for Vrana. Mantha, at the moment, is better, but he's older, and his window is not going to coincide with the Detroit Red Wings' window, and that means Yzerman actually has a plan. And that's what we're just not seeing with Benning. Whether it's Benning or Aquilini or a combination of the two, they just compete year after year, yet have been one of the most losing teams year after year. Yet are trading away draft picks. Their plan is so insane and so frustrating. But what can we look forward to in the next couple of years? Well, if they can get Hughes and Pettersson signed to decent deals, they're probably not going to be able to get them on very long-term deals with a flat cap, with it being more of a bridge contract. It would be nice to get them in around like $8 million or something. If you were going to lock them up for longer, you could get them probably for like $10 million, $11 million, which in normal situations, I think is a lot better to do because player salaries go up pretty fast. And after a 5 or 6 year contract is over, all of a sudden the average for a number one center and a number one defenseman are probably going to be about 3-4 million higher. So you actually save a lot if you can buy out those UFA years. And then you also keep them on the team. There's not a chance that they're going to walk. And who knows, with our luck, Benning is still going to be around in like 5 more years. It's going to be the longest serving GM in NHL history. You're going to look in the NHL record book. It's going to be all these old timers like Punch Imlock, Teddy Shore, Dit Clapper, Jim Benning, longest serving GMs. People are going to think he was the GM for the Vancouver Millionaires way back then. No, the Canucks. Oh yeah, when they finished out of the playoffs over and over again and traded all their picks. Anyways, we know that there's talent here, and there are some potentially elite game-changing players. If you have a center like Pettersson, when he's on the top of his game, he's doing some special things. Hughes can do special things. Demko is rock solid and is only a $5 million cap hit. You look at guys like Carey Price, really high cap hit. Bobrovsky, all these goalies, they're making a ton of money and there's no guarantee that they're going to do anything for you. They actually might be a huge liability, and now you are not able to get anybody else. But their defense is just a mess when you've got Myers and Schmid making $12 million and Schmid having a so-so year. It just seemed like he was maybe a bad fit or didn't gel with Green's system. Or I like what he can do because he can move the puck well. He can kind of shoot it. He's a good playmaker. And I think that in the right spot, he could be a very useful player. You know what I noticed, though, with Schmidt? And we heard some rumors that there were some players asking for trades, and then Jim Benning denied that. That he even talked to Schmidt, and that Schmidt said he didn't want to trade. I mean, what's he going to say, though? I wouldn't be surprised if they just lied about that stuff. But I remember one of the first couple games Schmidt played at the Canucks, and the Canucks were having a rough start. And Schmidt was skating off the ice, and he went to look at Hughes, and kind of give him like a fist bump or something, like kind of pump him up. And Hughes just had his head down, and it was so depressing. And I could see Schmidt thought, holy shit, this is not a good culture right now. What have I walked into? And I think eventually they pulled it. They had some good moments and then some bad moments. So hopefully there's some good there for him to grab onto. But I definitely had the feeling like this guy just came from Washington and Vegas, where he had so much success, and they were a really confident, cocky, kind of bullyish team. And now he's on the Canucks, and he's on the team with the victims. So I wouldn't have been surprised if he wanted to trade, but I wouldn't be surprised if he stayed. The problem is that him and Myers take up far too much money, and that's why you lose players like Tanev. I know Tanev was before Schmidt got here, but when you are trying to add these guys on the defensive end, I don't know what Benning is thinking. You can't just keep giving $6 million to people, Myers, and then go out and get Schmidt. It doesn't work that way. You're running out of money all over the place, and you're giving up good players. Anyways, Benning is still here. Looks like he's going to stay. The Sedins, I would hope that the Sedins get in. They start learning the front office system. Maybe they'll have them in like some kind of a role between the players and the GM. Maybe development, but I would think the Sedins are going to want to be around day to day in the office learning. I don't know if Benning is the person you want to be learning from, but I think they're pretty smart guys who love the game, are professional, have a lot of integrity, and want to be involved. And I think that they're the kind of guys that would show up every day and would just shadow him and learn how the business works. And maybe the Sedins could be our Joe Sakic, our Steve Yzerman. Except we'll have two. So fuck you guys. So I hope they get to stay around, and I hope they do a good job. I think that, Trevor Linden came in, and it was a great name, but he wasn't really involved in hockey, and they didn't let him apprentice. They just immediately threw him up as the president. So if the Sedins could come on, learn the biz, maybe do some talking for Benning, because Benning is not a great talker. He doesn't instill confidence in people listening to him. I think they're the kind of guys that would want to learn. You would just hope there would be a more skilled GM that could teach them. Green got a contract extension. It's hard to say Green's value. They had a good run in the bubble against Vegas, but it was mostly Demko near the end of it. But we've also seen them just get eviscerated defensively. They're one of the worst defensive teams under Green. Okay, he's had Pettersson and Miller. He's had Pettersson and Hughes and Besser either win a Calder Trophy or be in contention for it. But are those players also just amazing, on their own, no matter who the coach is? I don't know. I think he's done pretty well with the kind of lineup he's been given. He tends to go for two strong lines, plays the hell out of them. Then he has a third line that's the best of his bottom six, and then he just doesn't really play his fourth line. And he's constantly changing things around with his defensive pairings. And I feel like his defensive system was getting a little better by the end of the year, where it seemed like the defense were able to hold on to the puck a little bit more. I wouldn't have been upset if they went with somebody else. I just think it was a bit shitty how they treated him, keeping him hanging forever. And the way they've been keeping Ian Clark hanging forever. Now they're talking about how they are probably going to get it done with him. But the way they kept Toffoli hanging, Stetcher, and Tanev. And wouldn't it be great to have Stetcher and Tanev making the same amount Schmid does, giving you a top 4 shutdown guy, shot blocker, and also another guy that can move the puck probably almost as well as Schmid can, and is a real sort of heart and soul guy like Stetcher, and is cheap too, and loves Vancouver. And a fan favorite. And of course you have to be able to play, but that doesn't hurt. Anyways, hopefully they do get it down with Ian Clark. Green's going to be around. We'll see how he does. Hughes and Pettersson got to get signed. And Hamonic. If you could get Hamonic for, say, like $2 million or less, or just another 1 year, 2 year deal or something, I wouldn't want him for more than 2 years. How old is he? Because he looks like an older guy, but it's hard to say. All right, Travis Hamonic is 30. This is scary. I'm a little worried that Benning is going to give him 3 years, $3 million or something, and we're going to be stuck with him for a while, which isn't too bad for a solid veteran defenseman. He's looked like he's kind of figured it out with Hughes. He's not afraid to stick up for his teammates. He's punching people out. He's a physical guy. He's got a decent pass, decent mobility. It'd be great to have him for like 2 years over 2, but we'll see. He's one of those guys that doesn't really want to go too far. He's not going to go look for the money and end up playing in Arizona or traveling all over the country or the continent. He's expressed that he wants to stay in the West. Calgary. Winnipeg could use him. Their defense could use some patching up, although we'll get to them and what they did in the playoffs. So hopefully Benning doesn't overpay Hamonic, but I wouldn't mind him sticking around for a good price. But it's Benning, so good Lord. All right, let's talk about the playoffs. Colorado looks like such a fun team to watch, such a fun team to be a fan of. They sweep the Blues after the Canucks took the Blues to town, surprised them in the bubble, a Blues team that didn't look like they really wanted to be there. Colorado, younger, faster, better at everything, deeper in everything. They came out and just decimated the Blues. What about Binnington at this point? The Blues rode Binnington to a Stanley Cup a few years ago, but since then, the guy, I don't think he's won a playoff game since then, since he's won the Stanley Cup. Could that just be a terrible defense in front of him? Yeah. He's also sort of an unlikable guy, the way he runs around and tries to play tough guy, pushing people and flicking them, but he never really takes a punch or gets involved in a fight. He seems like he's one of those sort of like strategic tough guys. So I find him a bit annoying. I would like to see the guy bounce back. I feel bad for players that look like they're going to flame out, especially goalies. It's a tough position, but he doesn't make himself very likable. St. Louis, I think, is... Man, they could be in a tough position right now. They lost their captain last year, and they need to retool. They brought in Hoffman. It didn't seem like he did enough for them. They got Ryan O'Reilly. They got a decent nucleus, but I think they're going to have to start retooling pretty soon. Would have been nice, but you'd like to think you could trade your captain, but at that point, he's been around for so long. It just would be disrespectful to do that. And they wanted to keep him, I guess, for another playoff run. I mean, when you just won a cup and you got basically the same team, you want to keep going. So, anyways, Colorado beats the shit out of them. Just like Gabriel Landeskog grabbed that Blues player, much bigger than him, and just gave him, it was such a passionate fight when he saw his talented lineman. I think it was Rantanen got hit. He grabbed that guy and just fed him. Machine gun fists. It was one of those... It was a real fight of passion. He was angry. He wanted to slam his fist into that guy's face. He set the tone. He swept him in that fight, and Colorado swept him. I'd like to see them win. I'd like to see Joe Sakic get rewarded for his patience, for knowing that he had to move on from some of his younger picks. It would have been really easy to just stick with the first guys that you drafted. Stick with Ryan O'Reilly, stick with Matt Duchene. And he was smart. He got such a good haul from Matt Duchene. And Duchene has bounced around and looked like kind of a jerk wherever he's played. He went to Ottawa and he got busted on that taxi or Uber's video publicly in well, they were in public, they're in an Uber, and you don't expect somebody to film you, but it can. You're just out with your, and even if it's not in public, you're talking about your coach like that. You're talking about your special teams instead of trying to make it better. And I watched this guy play in Ottawa a few times. It was his birthday. Everybody was telling him happy birthday over the PA. The crowd was telling him happy birthday. He didn't even look up. He was just looking to his friend. Maybe they don't hear that stuff, but yeah, he just seemed like a little prick to me. He seemed like one of those guys that's going to take up a big chunk of your salary, and he's not going to be a difference maker. He's going to be maybe third or fourth best forward on a team, but you put him up against the top competition, he's going to fold. And now Nashville's stuck with him. But Colorado moved on. They were smart. And now they've got a killer team of speed with enough grit, so much talent on defense. And we'll just see if their goaltending can take them far. Who do they got on their Grubauer? So it'd be interesting to watch Colorado win because hopefully this would inspire other teams to get back to offense. That's what I would like to see. And, you want to see a fun league. And the Canucks right now are built like a very offensive team. So if Colorado could make that successful, that would be good for Vancouver. It would just be very, very impressive. And maybe it would influence the Canucks owner to look at more of a Joe Sakic type and look at the things Joe Sakic does compared to Benning and see how drastically different it is. Vegas finally knocks off Minnesota. I think everybody thought Vegas was going to steamroll Minnesota. We saw Minnesota against Vancouver in the bubble and in the play-in round. And it was a fun, close series, but Vancouver wasn't a very good team. They just happened to gel. And it seemed like Vancouver put them away, not super easily. It was a good fight, but they put them away. But with Kaprizov and their team gelling and Fiala, they gave everything they had. They took Vegas to the limit. What's going on with Vegas? I mean, are they going to try and keep winning a Stanley Cup without a real number one center? That's a problem. They haven't had a dominant. They haven't had anybody that would be considered a number one center in the last few years, and they keep trying to win this cup. And they didn't do anything to rectify that last season. They went out and they got a defenseman. And they have Robin Lehner and Marc-Andre Fleury. They got a great goaltending tandem. And Fleury is a guy I'd like to see win because a lot of people probably think of him as a goalie that was lucky to play on a powerhouse Pittsburgh team with Crosby and Malkin and Letang in their prime. And then Pittsburgh just got rid of him. So to see him go to another team and put them over the hump would be fantastic. And he's a likable guy. The exact opposite of Binnington. So we'll see Vegas against Colorado. That's going to be a hell of a series. Colorado, to me, is the much more talented and further along Vancouver, and I'd love to see them outskill Vegas and stick up to Vegas because you need to, because Vegas really bullied Vancouver in the bubble. So that'll be a hell of a series. Toronto trying to exercise their demons against Montreal. Montreal just really lacks offensive depth. Toffoli had a hell of a season. He padded his stats against Vancouver. He just hasn't been able to keep Montreal going against Toronto's depth. They just have so much depth, so many waves they can throw at you. They can lose Tavares, and they keep coming. And Toronto looks a lot more confident this year, more willing to play defense. And they don't seem to be panicking, even though they should have put Montreal away earlier. And now we're heading into a game 6. I think Toronto will do it. I think they'll do it in Montreal. There'll be 2,500 Montreal Canadian fans in the stands. That'll be nice to just watch that, to hear that. I wonder how loud they can do. I wonder if they can tarp off the entire top bowl and just put everybody in the lower section. Or that's probably not how they have to do it because they want to have social distancing. So they'll probably have to use the whole place, but just have extreme space in between people. That's going to sound terrible. And it's going to look really bad. Yeah, it'd be so much better if you just jam them in, but I guess that defeats the purpose. But if Montreal does win and it goes to a game 7, then, oh my God, does Toronto just start squeezing that stick again and start worrying and then start looking back at Jack Campbell and going, oh my God, we're probably going to lose this. This is the guy that we have. We didn't bother fixing our goaltending. We just went with somebody we think could finally turn it around. You can write a lot of nice stories on TSN about Jack Campbell, but he does actually have to do it when it counts. And I've seen several stories after losses of him constantly blaming himself, saying he has to be better. He has to be better. Well, there's saying you have to be better on TSN, and there's actually doing it. I'm pulling for him. He seems like a likable guy. And goaltending's a tough position. I'd like to see the Leafs do well. I'm not one of these people in the Vancouver sports, I don't know, what do you call this? Media, Twitterverse, that wants to see Toronto fail. I feel bad for them. I like what Kyle Dubas is doing. I like what Brendan Shanahan's doing. I like the kind of players they've brought in. I like the way they play. And I feel bad for Toronto fans. I used to live in Toronto for about 4 years too. I've been to a game. I watched Detroit. I bought tickets off a guy in a parking lot. I missed the first period where Detroit scored the 2 goals, and then they just sat on the lead for the rest of the game. It was so boring. It was the Kessel and Phaneuf years. Oh, it was awful. I think my favorite player of the night was probably Komarov and Jake Gardner. He had a nice game. Anyways, if Montreal wins, it'll be kind of funny just to see the reaction in Toronto and to see Austin Matthews' face, because he's a bit smug. But then Montreal's just probably going to get smoked by, oh God, Winnipeg. Maybe. That would be an interesting one. But then what? Montreal's going to get to the third round? Because, yeah, maybe they could sneak by Winnipeg. Then they're going to be in the third round and just get destroyed by Colorado or Vegas. They're not winning the Stanley Cup. Toronto could. I would like to see Toronto against Winnipeg. I think Winnipeg will probably wear them down. Winnipeg is they know how to win. Well, at least they know how to win against Edmonton. Edmonton losing 4-0, getting swept. How disappointing is that? We think we've got it rough here, where Benning is not making the most of Pettersson and Hughes' entry-level contracts. How about Connor McDavid having one of the greatest seasons anyone has ever had, and they consistently disappoint in the postseason? Getting swept. People say it was a close sweep. Winnipeg plays well. They have good forward depth. They have enough defense to get it done, and they have Connor Hellebuyck to fill in the gaps. And they have a good coach, and they play tough, and they play as a team. They're kind of like a less talented Boston Bruins team. I've always found when I watch them play the Canucks, it seems like they're not afraid to try to mix things up. They can get a bit of a swagger going, and they're not afraid to play the right way. So I think in that second round, I feel bad for McDavid. What's he going to do? He was so pissed. I think he was yelling at Puljujarvi because Puljujarvi gave him some terrible pass. It looked like they'd kind of figured it out in Edmonton. They've got a couple lines going. Their defense could use some work, and they're probably going to need more than Smith. I was watching a lot of those goals Smith is letting in. Some of them were just bad on his part, and a lot of them were just because they were like point blank shots, and they've gotten so many grade A chances. Eventually, they're going to go in. Smith was a nice story, but if you'd want some insurance, like maybe bring in Robin Leonard, he's always available, or Fleury. They could have got. I bet you Vegas was shopping Fleury. It's just that big salary cap hit, right? But yeah, maybe a little bit more defense, a little more depth. They might have a long way to go. Edmonton. They could be in trouble. Anyways, Winnipeg and Toronto. I think Winnipeg will take Toronto to the limit. I think it'll be a game 6 or a game 7, but I think Toronto will just keep wearing Winnipeg down. As for Colorado and Vegas, this is going to be a hell of a series. I'd like to see Colorado win it. I wouldn't mind Vegas winning it. It must be heartbreaking to get that close year after year. But you'd have to think after the dominant display Colorado had, they just swept the Blues, and they looked unstoppable. Whereas Vegas just got taken to 7 games by Minnesota. I think at the playoffs things get tight. You need a big center. You need a talented center to make things happen. Halford and Bruff had the one of the Vegas radio guys on, and he was saying it doesn't matter that the Vegas outshot Minnesota 20-1 in one of the second periods. What matters is they're not getting any quality shots; they're just playing on the perimeter. So they haven't found that like real tough kind of swagger that we saw them have against Vancouver in the bubble last year. Anyways, over to the East, the Islanders beat Pittsburgh 4-2. They're going on to the next round to face Boston. Again, I'd love to see Barry Trotz win a cup. He finally got Washington over the hump. Washington was too cheap to give him big money that he deserved. And I get it. You can't trade a coach, right? You're stuck paying them. But they should have. Could you imagine letting him walk after that? You had the same basic team in Washington for so long, and he finally gets you to the cup, and you say bye because you don't want to give him the proper coach's wage. He's in New York. They've done really well in the playoffs with him. They don't have a huge amount of talent, but he knows how that team plays. He was saying in an interview, it's not, or a post-game conference, everybody thinks he just plays defense, but he just gets to know the team and their strengths. And he has that team play pretty well. Man, it would have been so nice if the Canucks would have grabbed Barry Trotz when he was available. He was available when they were looking for a coach. But he's gone. He's not coming to Vancouver. But I wouldn't mind seeing him win the cup either. Because if he could do it with two teams, now he's in a whole other tier. That's pretty rare ground. And to do it so recently from his last one, and also with a team that doesn't have a very impressive roster, I don't think they can do it. I don't think they could get by Carolina or Tampa or probably Boston. The thing with Boston, so Boston beats Washington 4-1. In that first game, they were just throwing Ovechkin around. Ovechkin can fight back, but there was a clip I put on my Twitter, and as soon as I saw that, I thought, Boston's gonna win this series, and they did. The thing with Boston is they're built to win in the playoffs, and they just know how to win. There's so many regular season games where they're down. You look in the first couple of periods, they're down 2-0. Boston wins 3-2. They score when it counts. They have guys that can make big moments happen. Marchand is a bloody Hall of Famer. It pains me to say it because in Vancouver in 2011, he was such a little prick, such a little piece of garbage. Yet people villainize the Canucks and Burrows and Kessler, who, to be fair, are not that likable if you're playing against them. But man, I hated Marchand. But he's good. Think of those goals he just sniped against Luongo and stunned him and stunned Vigneault and stunned us. And he just has kept doing it. And with Marchand, the perfect two-way center, even at his age, Pasternak breathing a new life to them, and Taylor Hall, he's gotten out of that Edmonton curse and didn't get to do much in Jersey, other than win that MVP. Did nothing in Buffalo. He was potentially in a bad part in his career. If he chooses to go to Buffalo for some money, and then goes to Boston and flames out, that happens to really good players. He goes somewhere at the trade deadline, you don't have enough time to gel. It just doesn't work. If he would have had a terrible run this season in Boston, I don't think he would have been getting very much money the next year. Maybe one more team would have taken a chance on him, but he wouldn't have been. People wouldn't have thought of him as the MVP in New Jersey. They would have remembered Boston and Buffalo. So luckily, he's gone there. He's given them an elite scoring winger on the second line. And what did they give up for him? A second pick? They can fit him under the cap. Maybe he'll sign. If he has a good run, he might sign there. That'd be fantastic. I mean, I've gotten over the playoff loss, and I can respect what Boston's done. And I believe Gordon had a good hand in it. I'm probably betting with scouting. And to see Tuukka Rask finally get a cup, to see this perfection line win a cup this many years later, and with Pasternak and Hall as a second wave, that'd be pretty interesting to me. To win without Chara, they're just a team that can do it. But who I'd really like to see win, Carolina. Carolina just disposed of Nashville 4-2. The series a little closer than it looked like it was going to be. Carolina, I would love to see go far. They're a really fun team. They have 3 goalies. I like Dougie Hamilton. He's one of those guys that's really skilled and gets a bad reputation because he likes to go to museums instead of get drunk at bars on road trips. They play an offensive, up-tempo, fun game. They went from being the blandest expansion team. I mean, Minnesota was always boring, but at least they had an identity. Carolina was just kind of whatever. And now they are an exciting team. They're a team I like to watch play. They've already won a cup. Isn't that crazy? They could win another. They could possibly win 2. But this is just the beginning for them because a lot of their team is young. And Rob Brindamore is just dialed in. I was watching some video of him after a win. Had his dad on speakerphone who was sick. Maybe he's older or has a serious illness or something. But he was telling the guys how all this guy does, all my dad does is watch these games. And he loves what you do, and you just made him feel so good. And they all sang happy birthday to him. And when it came to say happy birthday to Rod's dad, so it'd be cool to see Brindamore win as a coach after he played in Carolina. I think he's been a part of like all of Carolina's playoff success because I believe he won the Stanley Cup there, right? He's a badass. He took less money because he made enough in his career, and I think he wanted to make sure his assistant coaches got good money. He's a great story. That team's a great story. I like what Sarah Sivian, how she covers them on Twitter. She's awesome. And it's going to be a hell of a series. Them in Tampa Bay. Jesus Christ, so much offense. Tampa knocks off Florida 4-2. Florida is a team that I've always been a fan of. You know, when Dale Talon went down there, I liked the players that he was picking up, and it just never worked out. And they've come around. Barkov has emerged into a stud player. They got a lot of exciting players down there. Aaron Ekblad had an unfortunate injury. And they're sort of struggling with their goaltending. So hopefully they don't steal Ian Clark from us to try to fix Bobrovsky. Florida, I'm glad to see they're on the up and up. They have had like 0 playoff success since they had that magical Cinderella run to the finals in 1996. I think Bruff tweeted that they've won like 9 playoff games since then. So that's 1996, 2006. Oh my God, over 20 years? Jesus Christ. That's sad. So, I'm glad they're on the upswing, but Tampa just steamrolls them. Kucherov sits out for most of the season on LTI. So they get to put him in. Basically, get one of the best players in the NHL. They get to add for free to their salary cap. They're looking like they're going to repeat. I would like them to win too. I'd be happy that they've will finally have like a modern dynasty, a pretty likable dynasty. They're a skilled group. The NHL is a copycat league. So if Carolina, Tampa, or Toronto or Colorado wins, people are going to think you got to have speed. You got to have speed and gritty, speedy guys and lots of skill and roll a bunch of lines and have a really good scoring third line. JT Miller used to play in the third line there, the fourth line there. Oh dear. So Tampa and Carolina is going to be a killer series, and I'd be happy if any of them win. And I'm kind of pulling for Carolina. Boston would be fun to watch. Tampa, Boston would be fun. The Islanders are not that fun to watch, but seeing if they could get through would be fun too. So I think that. Who do I think is going to win it? God, it'd be great if Colorado won. Colorado's going to be tested, though, with Vegas. Oh, Colorado and Toronto would be such a fun series to watch. Colorado and Vegas is already going to be great. I just like watching Boston. Even if the Islanders are kind of boring, I think it's going to be like a really tough series. And Carolina Tampa is going to be really fun. And then after that, like Tampa, Boston, Carolina, Boston, and then a final. Oof. Toronto or Colorado or Vegas. I'd love to see Boston in the finals, or Trotz, or Carolina, or Tampa. But I think best case scenario would probably be Tampa and Colorado would be great. So that's my thoughts on the playoffs. I haven't been able to watch a lot of them, but I'm trying to keep up with all the highlights and watch the condensed games. What are you seeing in the playoffs? I'm really looking forward for the Canucks with the expansion draft coming up. Obviously, the draft lottery. This is going to be such a crapshoot. Let's see what the Sedins are going to do. There's no one they can really buy out. Because the problem with all these big contracts that the Canucks have is that they're basically buyout proof. You don't save any money on them because they're all full of bonuses. So we'll see what they do moving forward. Hopefully they can get Ian Clark signed. And that's it. That was kind of a long one. So thanks if you watched and listened all this way. Leave a comment if there's anything you want me to cover in the next video. And I will try to get to it if I can. Have a good one. Happy hockey to you. Bye-bye.